Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another good episode. We are back with over the weekend. We are having a jolly time. We are actually coming off of a boiler room event, and we're basically right into Friday. What I wanted to do is actually bring in another good artist of mine, one that actually is closer to home, actually, the good old New York now, and we wanted to hear a little bit of their story and their background. We have Mr. Brian Abelson on the mics. Hello, good sir. We have a little bit of information on you as well. I know for the past 2 decades you've been crafting and producing, you've been DJing, you've been also, spending your quality time, volunteer hours as well. What you do is you blend hip hop with a little bit of house, a little bit of garage, with a little bit of synth. You even throw in some techno here and there. And basically we were coming in to see what your journey is. And that's when you come in.
More of a journey than a hero's journey.
Everybody has their own, spin on it.
Lots of ups and downs, smiles and frowns,
But, tell us, firstly, before we jump into anything, tell us about yourself. Give us a little synopsis on who you are.
Yeah, my name is Brian. In my late 30s, I grew up in Southern California in a town called Pasadena, outside of LA. We'll go into that more, but kind of got started in music probably when I was like 13 or 14. I was really into hip hop, like very much like underground backpacker style hip hop, like Aesop Rock, like Rhyme Sayers, Deltron. We can go into all that stuff. Started making hip hop beats when I was like 15, hanging out on internet forums, sharing tips and tricks, selling them to rappers. Kind of kept at it for many years. In college, kind of transitioned more into like you could call it like electropop. This is very much like Bloghouse era, like 2007, 2008. Had sort of a band in college, and we played some shows and festivals, but then that sort of fizzled out after we graduated, and moved to New York right after I graduated, kind of hoping to find a musical community. It took a while, and I ended up kind of spending more of my first few years just like
figuring it out,
finding a job. I went to grad school during that time, and kind of like after about 7 years of that, I was like, this isn't very fun. Let me try music again, and found like the community I was always really looking for, kind of surrounding like the sort of underground dance music community in New York, like sort of the key institutions at that time, and kind of still were Sustained Release Festival and Bossa Nova Civic Club, and sort of around that made a lot of friends, started making music again. I learned how to DJ, that sort of sent me on my journey into dance music. That's kind of where I'm at now. We can talk more about the last few years, but that's the trajectory.
I remember I did do a little bit of research, and I looked at like the artists that you worked with in the past, or what you're working with now. I seen that about 8 years or so, you actually were right beside, while you're on the same lineup, you were playing with who is it? Pretty sure it was DJ Seinfeld, actually. So that's a pretty big exactly. That's a pretty big freaking move when it comes to it. That's lo-fi house too, which is like my favorite genre. Yeah. So that's like it got zinged to me, essentially.
I'm guessing that's how you got my contact information. It seemed like when you sent out the email was like a big list of people that had released on Lobster Theremin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I try, of course, I always try to speak to everybody when it comes to this genre, essentially, because that's our whole season right now is based on exclusively music. But when it comes to the underground scene, how did you get into the scene, essentially? Because New York, obviously, as you know, it's a melting pot, right? So
so like in like 2013 or 2014 is when I first started like going to parties and stuff, and that was a very different time than what we have now in New York City. There weren't really any like dance music oriented clubs. Like Bossa Nova had just opened in 2013, and besides that, you know, you had the like downtown venues, but like that wasn't really the vibe. And so a lot of the stuff was like underground parties, and there weren't that many of them. One that I went to kind of early on were like bunker parties that like Brian Kasenik runs. Like those are pretty formative. They used to run out of like this like venue called Public Assembly, I think. It was like right next to the Music Hall of Williamsburg. But yeah, I had a friend who like had studied up abroad in Berlin, and he was like, let me introduce you to this. And I didn't know anything really. Like the funny thing about like because I've been making dance music, or what I thought was dance music, like, and the funny thing about people who were like in the like blog house scene is like you were making music that was like an approximate, like other people had approximated like original house and techno artists, and then like other people had emulated it, and then you emulated that without having any connection to like, I didn't know anything about like Detroit or Chicago or like any of that. Like I was completely ignorant, but somehow I was like making 4 to the floor beats with like an open hi-hat and like, you know, so coming at it in like 2013, it was like all new to me. Like I remember my friend like I guess I was like dancing weird for him, and he was like, this is how you dance to techno, and like when it drops
this is how you dance to techno.
Put your hand up like this. So like I was like, wow, okay. But yeah, so that was kind of my entrance, going to those parties, really just like being pretty anonymous, like not knowing anyone, not really knowing what any of the music, just like sort of like a blank slate really, and in some ways like I miss that feeling, you know, like being able to go to a party and be like, no one knows me here, I don't know anything that's playing, I'm just gonna like enjoy this and like sort of just experience it rather than like, you know,
be the person that's creating it.
Now I get like a little too analytical. I'm like, oh, like that DJ missed that mix, or like, oh, I know that track, like or oh, maybe my friend's here, like just like the closer you get to it, sometimes I think like the further away you get from like
one step forward, 2 steps back.
But yeah, so I think the sort of key moment for me, like really diving into it, was going to Sustain Release. I think the first one I went to was the second one, which was 2015, and made like a great group of friends, just like randomly was placed in a cabin with some people, and they all became really close friends. Just like I remember really sort of falling in love with the culture and like the art of DJing itself. Were some of the people like Black Madonna, forget what her new moniker is.
I think it's like Blessed Madonna.
Blessed Madonna played, and Beautiful Swimmers played that were really fantastic, and Paula Temple was there, and just like such a variety of like
sound
styles and sounds and intimate space. Like yeah, really fell in love with it there. And um yeah, about that time I was like starting to produce music again, and finding a sound. Um and that took a while. But yeah, that's kind of, those are the key moments for me. And going to Bossa Nova too, kind
Okay.
of following that festival. Then this group of friends were all going there a lot, so I started going there like every week,
So it
multiple.
just kind of requires you just to be out there, essentially. Just be out there, always be pursuing, talking to
Yeah,
somebody and being around
yeah.
people, and eventually the balls will fall.
Like early on, it was so much about going out and meeting people. And once again, it's like something that I kind of miss. Like as I'm older and, now I'm sober, like there's aspects, it's harder for me to go out, especially like go out
Yeah,
late, like go to an afters or something like that. I'm not doing that anymore. And so like, yeah, I think being in this state or this phase of my life, you really realize like um, it's hard to participate in the culture from
yeah.
afar. You really got to be there. Like you got to be there, and you got to meet the people, and you have to have conversations. Yeah.
I did speak with a guy named Mr. Chad McMahon. He's actually a touring manager, and he's also sober. So he had the exact same mentality as well. He's like, man, it's hard to keep up with these people when you're, not doing anything, you're not drinking, you're basically just
Yeah.
and being off the vibes essentially. I find it hard to even wrap my head around not like not drinking and not partying basically at parties, but obviously people do it. So it's like I truly do think that it's a better situation when it comes to not being crazily intoxicated in these situations, or is it a thing that you kind of miss, I guess you could say.
I miss it. And I think what I miss more than anything is like there's a bit of like a feeling of invincibility. And once you realize that, and it's not the same for every person,
Yeah,
right? Like some people are good at moderating, some people take care of themselves, they're good with their diet and exercise, and know how to maintain an equilibrium while doing substances. But like I wasn't that type of person. So
yeah,
like, you know, it's not even a matter of like feeling like urgent. Like I just know I can't do that.
yeah,
I know that now it's like, oh, like I'm just not that person. I can't, because when I'm like, once I start it, then I end up at the afters at like 12
yeah,
a.m.
exactly. And
12 p.m. the
that's
next day.
literally how it
So,
is.
um, but I know plenty of people who are not only like are sober, but like had been sober the entire time I've known them and have been participating in the scene and are like, very important people in the community and have lots of very intimate connections with everyone. And like one person in particular, like I spoke to her, I'm like, how do you do it? Like recently, like after I had gotten sober, like a few years back, and like she was like, I pick my moments, I like show up, I talk to everybody, and then I'm out. Like like I make sure that like when I'm there, I'm like intentional about like what I'm trying to do, which is
Yeah,
like maintain my connections with the community. And maybe I have like a mate. But like, so for me, I'm a bit more shy. And now when I go, it's really like it becomes more in some ways for me about the music than it ever had been
yeah.
before. Like, which is good. Like when I can't go for as long, but like the moments where I'm just like
You're
really,
there. You're there.
yeah, I'm 100% there with the music, with the DJ that's taking me on a journey. and I'm not like thinking about like when I'm gonna have my next drink or my next cigarette or my next hit. Like I'm just like there and I'm enjoying it. So like that's definitely a benefit to it all.
Yeah, see? So then I guess then the positives of being sober is just being consciously aware, essentially.
Yeah.
Like always, or kind of the omniscient being, almost, lack of better words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the next question would be for sure is what brought you to the music scene? Like what was the song that you heard that you said, okay, I can do this myself too? Because you have a coding background, which is also technology, but
Yeah.
they're both different things, I guess you can say, right? Like you can't put them together, really.
You can, but
Okay.
yeah, it's there's an aesthetic to that. And this is maybe a tangent, but like I don't know if you've heard of like sort of live coding algo rave scene.
No.
Basically, it's like there's all these different programming languages and environments that allow you to like live program music, and almost do like live improvisatory music. And at these like they call them algo raves, like they'll like project their like code on the screen, and then kind of a cool dynamic where there'll be like one person doing that with music, and then there's like another suite of tools for making live visuals with code, and you get these kind of duos of people. Yeah, so I guess I'll answer your first question, which is like what kind of got me into making music, and I was like, I can do that. I guess there's like a couple different points. Like one initially, like when I was like a teenager, just like realizing what sampling was and like how people sample.
Yeah.
And like, because I would be listening to this music and I didn't really know how it was made, but then once I understood, like, oh, people are like taking loops or pieces of things that they like and turning into I was like, oh, I can do that. Like, and definitely in a very naive sense, like I didn't know how difficult that can actually be, but so like and like I don't have any sort of like formal musical training. I've learned over the years how to play the keyboard a bit, but I'm not very good. So my process has always been kind of like the process of like a sample-based musician, just in terms of like taking bits and pieces of things and putting them together in like a collage style.
Yeah.
Increasingly now I don't use samples that much, but then like I'll play things and then sample myself playing them, or I'll like sample from different sample kits, or like I'll get my friends who play instruments to come in and then I'll kind of sample them. So that was like realizing and learning how to like sample stuff, and that was like 2000 or something when I first started doing that. And like I think I got Ableton Live 1.0.
Oh, the OG.
Yeah, and I got some little shitty audio interface and like one of those like Vestax portable turntables, the like little tiny ones. And that was my setup, and started like 2000 was like and I didn't know anything about digging, or like I just started going to record stores and buying like whatever I found in dollar bins, and like there were like some guideline, like people would post things in these internet forums. Like I was on this one called undergroundhiphop.com primarily. It'd be like what to look for in like when you're digging for stuff. It's like, are there black people on the cover? Like, was it put out between 1970 and 1979? Like, things like certain session players to look out for, certain producers to look out for, like, oh, does it have like a list of instruments that they use? Like, so like things like that. Like, and I just started buying a ton of
Yeah.
records, a lot of which I still have. A lot of them were kind of garbage, and yeah. And then I'd say like later on, when I got into dance music, it was actually like um very much like when I was like, oh, I can make this. Like I understand this and I can make it. It was very much like listening
Yeah.
to lo-fi house because I was like, oh, like this just sounds like boom bap, like hip hop beats that are sample based and kind of crunchy and grimy, but
Yeah.
like 30 BPM faster. And I was like, I totally understand this. I can make this. So like that was like the thing that I, first started making. And funnily enough, it's like very like all of it felt so similar to me because like are you familiar with like the Strictly Lo-Fi group? You heard about
No, I am not actually.
this like Facebook group circa 2015 or 2016, and it's called Strictly Lo-Fi. It was run by this guy, Alan Arbeles, who lives here in Queens. And it was kind of just the like the where all of that scene emanated from. Like all of the people that you would know from that scene were like posting on this forum. Like Balcher was in there, Malgrab was in there, DJ Seinfeld was in there. And so like that, like having that sort of forum, like where I could like make things and then post them in like a half finished state and get kind of feedback from people was really invaluable, like that. And it reminded me of kind of what it felt like to be making stuff when I was a teenager and posting it online and getting that feedback. And that's actually like the first record I kind of put out under my See Other alias was like a lot of the early Lobster Theremin stuff. It was just like this guy Jimmy was in this forum and he'd just be like, someone would post the music and then like he'd go into their DMs and be like, let's put out a record. And like literally like probably 10 or 20 of like the early Lobster Theremin records were just like anonymous kids posting shit on a forum, and then he would just be like, yeah, let's put it out, which is cool at the time. So that was kind of that stuff. I mean, Gulcher Lust work, that wasn't so much like I can make this, but like I want to be able to make something like this, and that was like most of the people in the Strictly Lo-Fi. Most of them were just like, I want to make like, this sound.
So like the group went from that group made you go from I think I can do it to I want to do it.
Yeah, and that I can, because I was like I knew how to produce, like I knew how to make tracks, I knew how to finish tracks, I knew how to mix, like I kind of had all the tools. I just didn't really have like an idea of what kind of sound I wanted to make.
So you're saying the lo-fi house was kind of like the beginning of your musical journey, and now you've transitioned to a different genre, I guess? Because also your See Other alias is like an older version of you, I guess you can say, lack of better words. It's also, I think, your live name too, isn't it? For whenever you did live performances or sets, essentially.
Yeah, I never really fully settled on a name, which is a really stupid thing to do as an artist these days. Like, Yeah, so the other stuff was just kind of it was mostly the lo-fi house stuff, and then I had a period where I really um I had a lot of moral dilemmas about what it meant to be like a white producer making like quote unquote lo-fi house that was sort of appropriating from black culture. And I didn't want to be, I didn't want to be like, and lo-fi house kind of became this like cliche joke almost. Um, and yeah, I kind of just tried to distance myself for that, for better or worse. Like,
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit naive. It was a little bit listening too much to like the dialogue at the time. I mean, those like criticisms are warranted, but also like, people make their music and they express stuff the way they want to. And like, so I feel conflicted about that decision, but now I'm where I'm at. So
Well, I mean, it's never too late to go back, Like
yeah,
you're currently still producing music and still making music.
yeah,
You're doing it under your regular alias. You just came out with a new track as well. You have the to know you, I believe the
to
name
know
is?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's under what I hope will be my final alias, which has kind of just been my like internet moniker forever, which is Abelson Live. Uh, and yeah, that record, I'm really excited about it. It was very much like done in the style of like 90s house single, like sort of strictly rhythm era. Like I wanted one track, but like six different mixes.
Yeah.
Um, and so there's like three different ones that I had a hand in doing, and then two remixes and then an acapella on it. It's with this wonderful, wonderful artist, singer, producer, Zosa. Used to live in Brooklyn for a long time, but now lives in Philly. And I got to know her through X Coast, Boyan, another person that was like kind
Yeah.
of strictly lo-fi participant who I've known for a long time. Yeah, he's done some tracks with her that I really loved, and yeah, I just reached out to her, and yeah, I'm really excited about that one. I think I
Yeah.
really captured the sound I was going for. It may be a bit retro, but
Well, to be honest, that's what in my opinion, anyways, that's what I want. Like, that's what
yeah,
I want when I hear music. I played it the other day and I was like, damn, this is good. I was like,
yeah,
damn, this is a
thank
good
you.
track. Like,
Yeah,
so,
I really love that the simplicity of those like sort of older house tracks, like no big builds or drops, like just a few
yeah.
elements that are really precise and well done, like nothing too flashy or showy, just like, yeah, the like minimum like elements you need to make a good track.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
um,
It really shows that the track really shows like quality over quantity, because it's just one track, as you said, remixed in different ways, but there's so much in the song, there's so much elements in the song that you don't need to make like 5 songs in order to be like, this is the
yeah.
new AP essentially.
Yeah. And like part of that was born out of necessity of the time where like you would get some like studio time and you'd lay down stuff, and like you didn't have unlimited studio time like you did now. Like you recorded some stuff on like ADAT, and now you have to make as much out of that as you possibly can. And I think that's part of the reason why there would be so many mixes. It's like, okay, like I recorded this stuff, now let me like, maximize my
Yeah.
output out of like one day in the studio.
Well, when it comes to it, it always is good to see artists just going out there and just making music in general, because some people, like, they make music and then they all of a sudden just disappear. And when somebody disappears, you're just like, what are you, like, where have you gone? What are you doing now? I want to hear more from you, but you're, you know, they're not making music anymore, basically. Well, when it comes to the music and producing and being there, it doesn't come too easy, I bet. So what does the process looks like to you when it comes to production?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I think I don't have a sort of single process. It looks different for different projects. But I'm a bit slower, I think, than some people. Like I really build stuff up over time, and it takes me a while to really finalize things. And that's not simply because of like being lazy or like not having the time or not knowing how to finish something. It's also just like sometimes I think it takes a while and you need a little bit of distance from something to kind of get it or like understand how it's going to work. But you know, usually it starts with like I said, I'm very like I think like a sample-based DJ. So like I'll hear something. A lot of times it's like I hear something and I'm like I want to emulate that in some way. So like I don't know, like I heard like the salsa track the other day and the horn line, I was like, wow, that horn line is insane. I wonder what that would sound like as a bass line. And so like it'll start like with ideas like that. And you know, and I won't like straight up copy things. It'll be more like I'll like kind of capture the sort of rhythmic pattern of it, or maybe like the scale is what's like working about it. So I'll figure out what scale it is and then try to play something in that. A lot of the stuff I'll make is like putting together other things I've made in the past. Like the release on Toucan Sounds, the To Know You track was like a year and a half ago. I found some really rough sketch with those like piano steps that are in it, and I'm like, that's something, and like then sort of worked it through.
Like this could and should be in a song.
Yeah. But where I am, so like not very process oriented when it comes to coming up with ideas, but I am very process oriented when it comes to like finishing something. Like like the creative side of producing is like coming up with the ideas. And then the finishing of the track is like not creative. It's just like work. And it's a matter of doing the work. And so, yeah, I've like, there's some kind of, I wouldn't call them formulas, but just like guidelines I always try to follow. So like, one is like, as soon as possible, when I have an idea that I think is kind of worthy of fleshing out, I want to get it to like, even if it's not good, like an entire song length. I need it to like be a sequenced out track. Like I need to get out of the like 4-bar loop, 8-bar loop, 16-bar loop zone as quickly as possible. Because once I have like I think of myself more like an editor. So like once I have something in place, then it's like a matter of like tweaking it and improving it and adding details and stuff like that. But if I can't get to that point where I'm like, I see the entire track, and I like doing this because I'm like, it's longer in Ableton, like it's like this long, not this long. So that's one thing. And then the other thing was something I picked up from Object and like a Red Bull Music Academy. And he basically said like how I make music or how I produce stuff and finish things is like I go through this process where after I finish my work on something for the day, I bounce it. When I come back, I listen to that bounce from the beginning to the end without like opening it up in the session. And that's very important because like your like tendency when you like open up something you're working on is to like start tweaking it immediately. And so just like sitting and listening to it all the way through without doing anything is important. And then like he just writes down everything he wants to change about it. And so I'll do the same thing. I just like have a notebook. I just like write down like the bass is too loud, or like add a drum fill, or like maybe add some other element at this point in the song. And then I sit down and I do those things and I like do them. I'd say like I'm okay if I only get 80% of the way there. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just like get some version of that out there. And then I just repeat that until I'm done, until there's like no notes left after listening to it. And sometimes that takes like 10 times, sometimes that takes like 25 times. Like I think Object said one time, like the longest he's had is like 100 something versions of that, you know? So and that can be overkill too. Like you can get to a level of perfectionism where only you can notice the difference between something, and that's not really, I've improved that. I used to be more like that, but now I'm okay with. So yeah, those are the two things. And like, but like I said, like when I work with other people, like I've just had to kind of accommodate to their working styles, and that's actually been good because like if you're working with someone and you're being a perfectionist, it's just annoying.
Yeah.
The other person's like, let's just be done with it.
Just make this
song.
song.
And so that was actually like the stuff I've done with John Barrera, like he's really just like, let's like bang it out, and like, you know, our first thought is the best thought, like our first idea is the best idea, just trust yourself, go with it. And that was like super refreshing, and like I took a lot away from that collaboration because it just like it was so much more fun making music that way than a sort of like more analytical like perfectionist style.
That's so then for sure you say writing the notes instead of changing it immediately is a better method for production than just going immediately to change it. Like, oh, I see this, I can add this, I can add that.
Yeah, you have like a laundry list of things to do so you don't get lost.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Otherwise you'll like do the classic thing where you like start changing things and then like 2 hours later you're like, wait, this sounds worse. Like, what was I doing? Like, so just like, yeah, having some like, you know, if you get lost and you forget what you're doing, you're like, oh right, like
I have the spaces here.
Do X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
That's kind of, you probably get a little bit of a dopamine boost too because you have a list and you know
you check
exactly.
you check the things off the list. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Do you happen to have any misconceptions? Because usually I ask this question, misconceptions in the electronic music scene. You know, things that the people from the outside world notice, but it's completely false, basically.
That's a good question. Like about the scene in general, or like?
Yeah, it could be the scene, it could be the music, it could be the people.
Well, I think one, just like what we were talking about earlier, like not everyone is on drugs. Not everyone is like, that's not the center of everyone's experience.
Yeah.
I think that's a misconception. Like I know it's like a cliche, like it's all about the music, but for some people it really is. Like
exactly.
It's all about the music. So, and I don't know. that like DJing is easy. I don't know if that's a misconception anymore, but it's not. No matter the level of like technical sophistication you have with your equipment, like it's still hard.
Yeah, that pretty much
Yeah.
wraps it. Yeah, that pretty much
Yeah.
wraps it. I had a realization as well once. In 2017 we went to Electric Forest in Michigan, and we said, me and my friend group were all like, okay guys, this festival, this is gonna be the beginning of it's music. This is gonna be the beginning of us going because we really like the artists, we really like the music, and we just have to go and immerse ourselves in that. And ever since then, every single time we go anywhere, basically, it's exactly that. We're there because we just really like the music, and sometimes we'll get even lost where, like, you just close your eyes and you just hear it, basically.
That's great.
Yeah,
it's good.
Sometimes happen.
It's good to be intentional like that. Yeah.
It's not like, I'm going because I really like the party, I really like the entertainment and the enjoyment, but like that's another level. It's another echelon, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when it comes to
Yeah.
it, is there any tricks, any tips, tricks that you've learned from somebody else that you're like, damn, I can never go without this. I can never make a song without using this.
I mean, like, I forgot who told me this or who taught me this. Maybe I learned it on my own, but like, it's a very basic thing, but just like, unsnapping the grid in Ableton, like, and just like most of my drum programming, I don't really use like the drum roll so much. Sometimes I do, like, and this is a product of like how I learned when I was like a teenager, where I just like got these sample packs and I just like drag things around. But like, I think early on I didn't know that you could like snap the grid, or like I didn't know that it was weird to unsnap the grid, and so like I just start making everything based off of sound and like how it sounded and felt, rather than like how it looked on the
how it is.
And especially for drums, like you can really, it's the whole like kind of Jay Dilla aesthetic, like just having a natural swing and like groove that's based off of the feeling of it, rather than what you think it should be, or really like what it looks like in the DAW, like and so yeah, just like, and yeah, that just like moving stuff around manually until it feels right is a lot of like, when it comes to drum, like all the stuff I do is like groove oriented, and it like, you want a good groove, like everything has to kind of like sit together in a nice place, and oftentimes that means like this thing hits a little bit before the beat and that thing hits a little late, and like so yeah, someone finally taught me like groove pools in Ableton, and that was cool. Like I use that a lot now.
What is that? Like,
it's like basically like and they come, Ableton has all their own like groove pools, or it's like a template for where notes should hit in time relation to the grid. So like they'll have like a groove template for like what an MPC set at 59% swing sounds like. And so you can load it up and put it on your hi-hats that are like straight on the grid, and all of a sudden you have something with like the swing of like an MPC. But you can also do it where like you take something you've already like played by hand, and then make sure like a bass line that maybe is not right on the grid, and then make sure like all your drum hits kind of like hit with it in sync, which is stuff like I used to do manually. And so it's like a shortcut to doing that. And like, or like, what I'll often like take a drum beat that I really like, a break that I really like the sort of swing and feel of, and rather than sampling it, I'll like kind of copy the like groove of it, and then I'll make
Yeah.
something else that, you know, has sounds that hit at the same points, and so it has a similar feel.
Okay, I get it. I get it. Now
Yeah.
I am learning. I feel like I now can also make music. With
Yeah,
like
you can.
all this
Yeah,
knowledge,
anyone
like
can. Yeah.
I like to usually host. I'm big into hosting the events. So a lot of people usually come up to me and they're like, "Yeah, you're a DJ. You doing DJ stuff?" I'm like, "No, like I'm usually just the guy that's listening to the music and enjoying it." But sometimes I always feel that I could actually just pick it up, basically. But I did
Yeah.
have one name. I was thinking if I ever made a DJ name, it would be DJ One More Song.
One more song. That's good. Yeah.
Almost like
That's
rolls off the tongue.
definitely the DJ at the afters.
Exactly.
Um,
What do you think about the evolution of lo-fi house music from it's, from I guess 10 years ago to now?
well, I mean, I haven't really kept up with that genre in the last few years. So
Okay.
like, I don't really think it like exists in the same way. Like maybe like are people making new music that they call lo-fi house, or is it?
I feel that at this point now they're making new, like they're experimenting more, I guess you could
Yeah.
say. So going a little bit out of the cuff of lo-fi essentially,
Yeah.
and just going into a new wave. But it's like the ship of Theseus, right? Sometimes you think, when is changing something so much become something else?
Yeah. Well, the genre thing is not very useful. I mean, it is like when it comes to like defining a point in the past and like a period or a phase. But yeah, like I never thought of myself like I was making lo-fi house. Like I was like, oh, I called it mid-fi house. Like I didn't want people to think of my stuff as like low quality. Like I was like, yeah, it's intentionally a little dusty and but yeah. What do I think of it? Well, a lot of there's like a few people that came out of that scene who are now like very big names and successful, and I think almost all of them have like left that sound behind, I think for various reasons. And are now probably known more for the stuff they've made recently than their like lo-fi house stuff. The genres, I think like the history of lo-fi house is really interesting. Just like the time when it became popular was like concurrent with like the rise of like algorithmic playlisting and recommendations like on YouTube and Spotify. And like I've been reading this book by Liz Pelly that just came out like called The Moon Machine. It's like a history of Spotify. And like the sort of idea like people at Spotify wanted basically people to turn on a playlist and never turn it off, never be like offended or too jarred by any music that they would turn off the playlist, just so like the plays kept racking up and the ads kept rolling and like the money kept flowing in. And so what they found was like the music that does that really well is this kind of like chilled out lo-fi beat stuff. So like that's why the like lo-fi beats to study and relax to thing is so big, because it just like you can literally just turn it on and never turn it off, and it's like just kind of always sounds the same. And like some people really like that. Doesn't matter what artist it is, it doesn't matter if it's even a human artist. Like it could just be an AI generating it. You just want this like steady vibe. So yeah, I think like a lot of why it got popular was it just sort of like the algorithms just like picked up on it and was like, this works, this is the type of stuff we want to be serving up to people. But yeah, I think Yeah, I think that's what I
Yeah,
think about
definitely.
it. Yeah. I
All
don't know.
right.
I have other thoughts, but
Yeah, you can
um,
probably go forever if you really wanted to, right?
yeah, totally. What do
Well,
you think about lo-fi house? What's your like take on it?
I feel that it's the perfect blend between like loungy and chill and relax. You know, the
Yeah.
ability to be the ability to talk to somebody inside of a club as well. Because whenever you're inside of a nightclub, it's usually do 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 do. It's so
Yeah.
loud, and you're yelling at people, and you're actually like trying to get a conversation going, and you basically can't because it's just too overbearing, the music essentially. But
Yeah.
when it comes to lo-fi, it's more relaxed. It gives you the ability to actually engage in a conversation and have something more beyond just singing or listening, basically. Not to
Yeah.
mention myself, I just truly feel that it's a good niche community of human beings that actually enjoy the music that they enjoy, just like every other genre, I guess you can say. But the ability to share the same songs, the same tracks, and able to actually bring it to somebody else as well. Not to mention, well, lastly, it's good, really good to have lo-fi house, especially I'd say in like the morning time, 6, 7 a.m. kind of deal,
Yeah.
because it's like a morning vibe. It's like a upbringing songs
Yeah.
most of the time. Also,
Yeah.
like the grittiness, it's got that '90s vibe as well, and we're all Gen X millennials, so we're kind of in that zone as well. We literally are born and raised on that type of in that type of culture essentially. So those
Sonic
elements,
quality, like
exactly.
tapes and VHS cassettes and stuff. Yeah.
So there's kind of a sense of nostalgia when you listen to these songs as
Yeah,
well.
it's super nostalgic, definitely. Yeah.
Especially now, because history likes to repeat itself. So a lot of the stuff, like, believe it or not, we're closer to 2050 than we are the year 1990. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy to think.
Yeah. No, and like in dance music, there's this constant state of just like recycling things, and I feel like it's gotten so so quick. That cycle is so quick that yeah, maybe even now there's gonna be a lo-fi house revival, and I don't know, 10 years later. Yeah.
I guess to put a little ribbon on it, I have the last question would be, what keeps you, or how do you stay motivated when it comes to music? How do you get over a writer's, or I guess you could say artist block, if you do have?
Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, because right now, it's a difficult time to be an artist. The environment is not friendly towards artists, and you're really expected to kind of be more than just a musician, like a full-on content creator. But yeah, I mean, the thing that keeps me motivated, one is just listening to music. One is just if I'm listening to music and listening to good music, I'm gonna get inspired.
Yeah.
Once you and it's harkening back to the question you asked, once you get that thing in your brain where you're you listen to something and you're I can make that, or or the sample brain, really, where I want to take that and manipulate it into something and then call it my own. It's hard to turn that off, and so that just that's always going to be there. I hear something out and I got a little document where I'm I'll go back and listen to that, and maybe find a sample or something that inspires you. So yeah, that, and then I've been focusing way more on collaborations recently.
Okay.
That kind of initially was and initially I got into that by working with this artist, Jennifer Vanilla, through a couple albums, and yeah, just trying to make things that I could never make on my own, and being inspired by other people's ideas and talents and skills. yeah, I mean that's super motivating. Yeah.
Do you happen to have like a person, I guess you could say, that you want to collab with that you haven't yet?
Like dream or like reality? Like,
Well, I mean, let's do both. How about that?
yeah.
Good.
Shit, that's hard. So the dream one, and this is like not gonna happen, but Tony Allen, the drummer from Fall of Duty, like, dude, just like had a groove. Like, yeah, I want to collaborate with him. Yeah, I forget the name of this track, but this, like, I always love this one. You know, Sebastien Tellier, this like French dude. I think it's called La Ritournelle. I always loved this track. I thought it was one of the most beautiful tracks I ever heard. And then like a couple of years ago, I realized it's like Tony Allen drumming on it. I'm like, no wonder that track is so good. And they actually like released like the solo drum track of that. And that's, yeah, it's so cool to listen to, because it's like just the beat is like musical. Like it's got like melody implicit in it.
And it's a pretty long song too. It's like
minutes or something. And then like he just did it. It sounds like a loop, but he just like did it in one take. Like, you know, it's just like one all the way through, or at least it sounds like that. I don't know how it's made, but so that's a dream one. Yeah, I've been like the stuff I've been into more recently is kind of returning to when I first got into making music, so more down tempo, kind of break beat, like like you would just call it like trip hop or like instrumental hip hop. So I've been making that kind of stuff and then working with singers. So I have one track that's hopefully going to come out soon with this woman or artist named Longbeard, my friend Leslie. And yeah, just like more singer songwriter people. Like I work really well with with like people who can sing and play an instrument, and then I can just like build the atmosphere around them. So more of that kind of stuff. That's where I really have a lot of fun.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good place to end everything right there, essentially. But I enjoyed our conversation. It was a good nice talk. It was a nice chat.
Yeah.
We had a whole bunch of things that we covered basically today.
Yeah.
You know, things about you, things about artistry, things about production. But when it comes to it, is there anything coming out in the pipeline in the future? And where can we catch you? Where can we find you?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, the To Know You record is coming out on Valentine's Day, so February 14th on Toucan Sounds. A couple of the singles are already out. And yeah, then I have probably a like single coming out with this artist Longbeard that I mentioned. No set release date yet. And yeah, you can find me probably on Instagram, so Abelson Live, it's my handle. And I also like have a website, and I occasionally blog and stuff. Trying to do more of that and less of the Instagram.
Yeah, I actually did notice that. I did look at the blog. Actually, it seemed like, you know, the most recent thing is the LA fires that you posted.
Yeah.
And you got a little bit of coding information in there as well. So
yeah,
it's a lot of your mind on paper.
Yeah,
on paper.
I don't do that for. It's less for other people's sake and more for my own. Like, I think partially because of all my prior drug use, I don't have a great memory, so I just like have been trying to use the website to kind of like remember things I've done.
Yeah.
I haven't been doing a great job of it, but that's the idea, at least. Just like, yeah, keep track of things I've thought about or felt over the years.
Yeah, see? Well, if you want to catch any of that, once again, you can go onto his website. You can go check out it's Abelson Live on Instagram as well. And I think that is it. I think at this point now, we'll catch everybody back on the next weekend, on over the weekend.
Thank you so much, Jamal, for having me. This is awesome. Yeah.
And that's a scene. Drop a like, drop a comment. Tell me what you think about this episode. You know what you have to do. Your mother told you. I told you. Look at your dog. Your dog told you to.